This drip all on my body, soaking wet the sunny. Looking like a walking lick, yeah, you can tell I'm grinding. Rolling back was full of loud, I can't hear nobody.
What's up, fuckers? Episode 24 of the Beer Latte Show. I'm Steve.
I'm Nick.
Danielle.
And today we have Danielle Young. Danielle, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
We're doing okay.
Hi.
I'll just answer for everybody else.
Hi.
Doing good.
So I understand that you have some stories, ghost stories from what I'll post later, but some pictures show the house is actually super creepy looking in pictures, honestly. I probably won't even live there, but you had some experiences there. Or why don't you tell us a little bit actually about the house first?
Okay. So the house, so I moved into the house in May of 2017, and I lived there for about 8 months. My boyfriend and a lot of his friends, they lived there for about 2 years. So a year and a few months longer than I did. And they actually went and did research on the house. So this is all secondhand knowledge from them. But they went to the local library. They did research through housing records and archives of the newspapers. And I don't know the timeline, so I'm not sure in what order this house was, these different things. But at one point it was the mayor's house. So the street that it's on is called Eustick. And Eustick at one point, it's just a street in Boise, but at one point it was its own little village or little town in the 1800s. And this was the mayor's house. And then it turned into a psychiatric hospital. At one point it was a schoolhouse. I think it was also just a general hospital. So it became a lot of different things because it was such a large house. And then the last thing that it was before the the landlord that we rented it from, before he bought it, it was a halfway house. And so sometimes we'd actually get, because it was still listed as a halfway house on Google. So sometimes we'd get people that would come up to the door and like try to come into the house to try and live there. It was interesting.
Man, imagine you're sitting in your living room and you're like, hi.
Yeah, actually that happened to my boyfriend. He said he like came downstairs and there was just someone sleeping on the couch and he's like, oh sorry, I thought this was the halfway house. And they're like, no, that's down the street. Yeah, so that happened quite a few times. So let's see. I'll start with his stories because mine are pretty quick, but his are a little bit more involved. So one of the pictures that I sent you is a picture that my boyfriend took of him standing on the diving board of the pool. And the pool was it's set off to the side of this massive backyard with like trees. And the pool is surrounded by like a chain link fence. And then there's like plants all over the place. At one point, the boys redid that whole area and they made it a beautiful garden. It was really pretty. But one day, so my boyfriend, his favorite thing to do in the summer, it gets to be like 110 sometimes here in the summertime. And so he'd just come home from work and he'd just go straight and dive into the pool and just cool off after work. And one day he did that like normal. And he said when he was down in the water, just kind of sitting, letting the coldness wash over him, he thought he heard someone else come in. And so he quickly went up, popped his head up and looked, and it looked like the ripples of someone jumping in, but there was no one there.
Oh.
And so he decided to do a little bit of research after this because he's an info searcher. But the research he found was there was actually a little girl that died in that pool.
Oh my
She
God.
drowned. And so ever since that point, like it would be like maybe once a week because he would do it every day. He would some sort of splashing, or at one point he said he heard like a little girl like laugh when he was out there. And so after that happened a couple times, he said he stopped going to the pool because it was just really creepy.
Yeah. I would,
after one time.
Right. Well, I just when he was telling me the story, I just got chills thinking because we were out. He told me the story. We were out at the pool. Okay, great. Thank you very much. I appreciate this so much. But he just told me that feeling of coming up and thinking that his roommate he gets off work the same time as him. His roommate had jumped in, but it was actually just a ghost. It was no one. And seeing the ripples of someone jumping in, I was like, oh.
Yeah, it's kind of creepy.
Yeah.
I'd be freaked out.
Yeah, I only swam in that pool once. The
That
funny
was
thing though, yeah, the funny thing though is I never really felt an overarching like energy, like negative energy or anything like that. I didn't mind living in the house. It was kind of creepy because it was run down, but I experienced a few things, but I was never scared. And my boyfriend said the same thing. He's like, it creeped him out, but he was never afraid. And so I always wondered, because I am a ghost story, like I love ghost hunters. I watch true crime. I love mysteries. Maybe it's because I'm a Scorpio moon. I don't know. But I always thought, oh, maybe I'll be afraid. And I wasn't afraid at all. It was okay living there. It was just interesting to like see all these weird things happen.
So it's always like a good energy in a way for you.
Yeah. I never felt like it was. I never had an overarching feeling of like, oh, I'm afraid or there's this negative energy around. I'm pretty sensitive. I'm very empathetic, so I feel like I could have sensed it, and I didn't. It was just weird stuff would happen all the time.
So you never got that feeling when like something's behind you, your ears kind of perk up, that kind of thing?
Not really. And I'll tell this story because I would say it was the only time I felt them but like really freaked out. And I was sleeping and in the room, and I actually sent a picture of the room that I stayed in, and it's the room where there's an open doorway into a bathroom. And so the view is from like the corner of the room looking at the door. And so our room was the largest room on the second floor. It had its own door out to the deck, and it had a bathroom, and the bathroom had 2 sinks in the front. And then you'd like walk into the back, and there was a bathroom with a tub and a sink and a shower and a closet. And so I actually sent pictures of this. So hopefully you'll be able to kind of take my description and
yeah, we're looking at it kind of like a hotel would have.
Kind of, yeah. And there's like a clawfoot tub in the bathroom, and there's like burgundy tile. So
yeah, super ugly looking.
No, but that's a fantastic house.
Yeah, I was in my like mid 20s, and so it was just kind of fun to live with a bunch of people that I knew, and it was a big house, so I never really felt like we were walking all over each other. So for that many roommates, it was nice, but I'm glad we don't live there anymore. But anyway, so I think it was, like I said, I'm all into this stuff. So I woke up in the middle of the night because I thought I heard someone, like kind of like if someone's calling your name to wake you up, and then you wake up because you're kind of hear them in the middle of sleep. And it was a woman's voice, and it came from the corner where the door to our room was. And at the time, my boyfriend and I had got a corgi puppy. And so I think he was about 7 months old when this happened. And I'm like, oh, I must have been dreaming when I woke up. And I looked at my phone. It was like 3 something in the morning. I'm like, oh, I must have been dreaming. But within like 2 seconds of me looking at my phone and thinking, oh, I must have been dreaming, my dog Link comes running out from the closet where his crate his bed was, and started growling at the corner where I heard the voice come from. Oh. And I like woke. Yeah, I was like, oh, this is like from the movies. And I looked at my phone again, and I was like, it's 3:00 in the morning. I was like, it's like Exorcism of Emily Rose. What's going to happen? So I woke up my boyfriend, and he started laughing, and he was like, it's just the spirit that lives here. There was like a house mom that ran the schoolhouse, and they think that she still exists in the house because it's not the first time that they've heard kind of an older woman's voice. And so that was the first experience I had. And then that next day, my boyfriend tells me a story about so his roommate, and I sent a picture too, there's an attic unit. It had a stairs up from like right next to our door. And his roommate lived up there. And then Zach, this was before I moved in, but Zach was sleeping, and it was in the middle of the night. And Zach was like, oh, I need some water. He goes downstairs, gets some water, and he hears someone whisper in his ear, and I can't remember exactly what they said, and I'm a little disappointed because I remember it being creepy, but he heard a woman whisper something in his ear, and he bolted upstairs. He's like, what the heck? Bolts upstairs. And at the same time, his roommate comes downstairs from his attic unit and was like, did you just hear that? I felt like someone just whispered in my ear. And
how would he hear that?
Exactly.
Somebody whispered in his ear.
Exactly. And it was the same thing. So the spirit or whatever talked to both of them at the same time. Zach was downstairs and Jake was in his attic unit.
Oh.
Yeah. And then one of our roommates, Salvi, before he moved in, he would come and visit all the time, and he would sleep on our couch in the living room. And again, this was before I moved in, but one day come downstairs and Salvi's like, guys, whoever was walking around last night, you kept me up, and people were coming downstairs, and I was trying to sleep. Like, come on. And Zach, my boyfriend, said, no one was awake. That was probably the spirit. And because Salvi didn't know. And so Salvi's like, no, it can't be. So he stays over one more night. Same thing happens the next day. He's like, you're right. In the middle of the night, he would hear walking along the stairs. And the second floor of this house had an open hallway. And so it was kind of like a hotel. You go up the stairs and it's open and you can see up into the second floor. And so he would hear them walking along the hallway upstairs, walk down the back stairs into the kitchen, and then he'd hear more walking upstairs and then walking down the front main stairs, that big grand staircase, and then walking into the room, but no one would be there. And Zach told me that Sally wasn't the only one that said that most people that stayed over and would sleep in the living room at night would hear people or whatever spirits walking around, and they think it goes back to either the hospital period of this house where they had nurses walking, checking people out throughout the night, or the schoolhouse when they had people checking to make sure everything was good or whatever. But that one creeped me out too. I never slept in the living room. Like after he told me that, I'm like, I'm never ever sleeping on the couch or in the living room ever. I didn't
not even just to
late.
see, like just to stay up late and be like, let's see if we can hear something.
Well, the reason why is because and I'll tell you this next story. So I actually experienced this twice, and both times it freaked me out too much. Within a couple months after this happened, we actually moved out of the house. So I was in my room, and it was in the middle of the night again. And I hear this sound, and it's loud enough that it wakes me up. And I'm like, what is happening? Like, it's in the middle of the night. I wake up Zach. Zach goes into the bathroom, and he goes into the bathroom where the clawfoot tub is, and there's another sink right there. And the hot water is completely 100% turned on, like blasting, just gushing hot water. And I was like, there's no way we fell asleep with that on, because I remember like going to bed. There was a process. I didn't just fall asleep and pass out and forget that I turned the hot water all the way on. And he's like, I know, it must be like, again, it must be the spirit that lives here, because I can't tell you, I can't explain it. So we go to bed, and then a couple weeks later, my friend comes over, and we'd been having some trouble with her dog. Like her dog was picking on mine and like peeing on my bed and like acting out because her dog wasn't used to traveling and being in another person's house. And so we were like handling that situation. All of a sudden I heard the sound again. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? I go into the bathroom, and the hot water is all the way turned on again. And I'm like, okay, this isn't just a coincidence. Like there has to be something doing this, because we tried to figure out a way to turn that hot water all the way on without turning the hot faucet, and you can't. There's no way. It was impossible. And so after that, it was only a few, like there was like 3 more months after that, and we moved out of the house. We're like, okay, we're out. We don't want to deal with spirit stuff anymore. And all of the roommates that we had at the time were just like, okay, we're done.
Yeah, that's threatening. That's more threatening than anything, I would think.
Yeah. And I couldn't find any pictures of this, and I think it's actually funny that the picture of this specific room was not included in the house listing when this house went up for sale and they had all those professional photos taken. It was nicknamed the Slaughter Room because I think it was built during the time that it was a hospital. It looked like a surgery room. Like it had a big metal door, like an old like 1900s metal door that swung open and closed and you could padlock it. And then the bedroom that was right next to it had a window, like a viewing window that you could see into the room. And the room was like, I mean, the boys that lived there invited some of the like satanic temple people that live here to do photo shoots in it. Like it was creepy.
Ew,
The most
that
creepy,
huh?
The most creepy. Like one of them put a salt pentagram down there to try, I don't know. They're dumb boys. But it was very creepy. It had like a fireplace in it. It looked kind of like to me, it looked like a kiln room for ceramics. Like it could have been like a kiln room for ceramics, but they called it the Slaughter Room because it was so insanely creepy. And my boyfriend and his roommate had their computers down in the area where this room was. It was in the basement. His roommate actually lived in the room next to it, and his roommate never had any issues, but I think it's because his roommate had a cat and she was one bad bitch. Excuse me. I don't know if you can curse on this.
Yeah, we're fine.
Okay, good. We call her Jane. She's like, she owns the block. And I think that my theory was that she protected Tim. So anyway, but they were down there just playing video games, or my boyfriend develops video games. So they were just working on things. At one point, he was also making music. And probably more than 20 times in the time that they lived there, he said that all of a sudden that metal door, which would have been closed and latched shut, would just open and like slowly open while they were down there. And yeah, it happened. He said it happened a lot. Like it happened more than 5 times.
That dude lived in the room that had the window to the other room?
Yes. I know.
He's weird.
I don't know.
Wait, but the kiln, the kiln, could that have been for like, I don't know, body parts?
I don't know. I always stayed away from there. Like I was in charge of cleaning the basement when we were moving out, and I wouldn't go down there if it wasn't broad daylight and we could open up windows and stuff. It creeped me out. I don't know how Zach and Tim had their computers down there for that long. In one of the rooms, or one of the pictures that I sent, it's like a room with, it looks like there was a bunch of built-in shelves at the very back of it. That was another room in the basement, and another one of our friends had his music producing studio in that room. I don't know how you lived in this house. Because we definitely, like I said, the stories that I've told so far is like just what I've heard and what I've experienced. They all experienced a lot more that I didn't. And again, I thought it was weird, but as soon as more females moved in, like that more feminine energy moved into the house, it was like all of the boys commented, they're like, yeah, it's weird. There's not as much stuff going on as we are used to.
So when the boys invited, those satanic people, was that prior to the girls moving in?
Yeah.
Oh, so maybe it calmed everybody down.
And the people they invited, it was more of like a photo shoot. It wasn't really like we're going to do a ceremony. I think it was more for performance.
Yeah.
Because not everyone that lived in the house, like, I don't think everyone that lived in the house really believed that it was supernatural, that it might have just been like, oh, it was just a thing that happened. So I totally believe in it though. And I was super stoked to experience it, even though it was creepy at moments. It freaked me out because I've always wanted to. I've watched those shows before and I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is real. They can always edit things. And now that I've experienced it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's weird. It's really weird because you question yourself. You're like, did that just happen? Did I just hear that?
Had you ever had any experiences prior to going into this home? When
I was really young, one I watched my younger siblings experience little things here and there, but I didn't really think anything of it till I got older. I'm like, oh yeah, my little sister or my little brother used to like talk to someone. We'd like walk into our bedroom and he was a baby and it would look like he was standing up in his crib talking to someone on the other side of the room, like sitting
Oh, I hate
on my
that.
sister's bed. Yeah. But I was little, so I was just like, oh, my brother's just babbling. I wasn't really aware. And then talked about my mom and dad and I talked about it later in life. And they're like, oh, that's creepy. We definitely experienced that too. And that's not normal. I'm like, oh, I guess it could have been talking to a ghost.
Oh man.
Yeah. But that was it. I just really I'm drawn to that kind of content because I like the mysterious and, investigations and trying to figure out things. So when I moved into the house, my boyfriend told me, he's like, hey, just so you know, it's haunted. I'm like, yeah. Okay. I went to the Queen Mary when I was younger. Like, okay. But then
What's the Queen Mary?
The Queen Mary is in Long Beach, California. And it's a really old shipping. It's like a vest ship that's old. And there's like ghost stories about old spirits from when the ship was functional. It was, don't quote me on this, I could be completely wrong, but it was during the time of like the Titanic, because it's in that sort of similar style, where you have the big stacks and like the black.
Oh, right.
Yeah. But there's a lot of ghost stories that come out of the Queen Mary, and my parents took us there when I was younger, and told us all about the ghost stories, but I didn't experience. So when I lived in this house, I was like, yeah, whatever. And then I believe my boyfriend, he's very much I believe in science. So he doesn't really believe in supernatural, but living in that house changed him.
But every time you talk about him talking about it sounds like he's so unaffected by it. Like, oh, that's just this.
Yeah, because he, like I said, living there, like the little things would kind of creep us out if we thought about it. But while it was happening, I never felt this fear. Like I never felt anxiety or uneasy being in the house. It was just kind of like, oh, that is weird and creepy while it was happening. So I think he kind of felt the same way. He's like, it doesn't affect my life. It's just kind of interesting. And when it's happening, sometimes it's creepy, but yeah.
But just as fast as it was happening, it's gone.
Exactly. Yeah. And like one time we lost our dog, and Zach thinks that he went out the back gate and then came back when he heard us calling him. He like snuck back in through the back door, but I closed all the doors. And so I always thought that like Link was somehow saved, because I just got this urge to go back into the house and look for him after searching for 2 hours. And I opened the front door and he was right there.
What?
And so I always thought that maybe that was part of the spirits of the house, because it was just it was so weird. He disappeared and then appeared at the front door when I felt this just this overwhelming urge to go to the front door, go check the front door. And I opened it and he was right there. So
That's crazy.
I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, it is a big house, and corgis only have those little tiny legs, but still.
I know, he is the stub master.
I used to have a corgi, I know.
Oh yeah, he's a stubborn little shit, but we love him.
Well, they have that Napoleon complex, so they can't help it.
Yes, he must protect.
Yeah,
he must protect. But yeah, that's the house, and so there were people that lived there after us, and they didn't last a year. They all moved out within the year, I believe.
Get out.
Yeah, and the owner that owns it now, every time we drive by, it looks like he's renovating the space, but nothing is it doesn't look like there's anything really being done. So it's been a money suck for him for sure, because it's a historical landmark, and so it has to be historically renovated. It can't just be torn down.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's got to be specific.
Yeah, and it has such a history. I I think we might go to the library again and kind of look through the records because it was so long ago that they did that. And the house does have a lot of history, and it's a little crazy to me that it wouldn't be haunted because of all the things that happened there and all the people that lived there and died there. And so, yeah, it was really interesting living in that house. I will say we moved out, and within like 2 months, we'd been having some financial troubles because some of our roommates stopped paying rent. And so we had to it was kind of a mess to get out. And like within 3 months of moving out, all of these little things that had been coming up for us, like the roommates not paying rent and having to deal with that. I had some stuff come up with work that was annoying. Zach had some things that were coming up in his life that just seemed like there's little things here and there that just kept coming up that were taking a lot of energy away from us, and they were really hard, wasn't getting solved quickly. And within 3 months of moving out, all of those things were resolved and we were fine. And yeah. And so, no, I never really felt super uneasy living in the house because of whatever was going on, the supernatural stuff that was going on. But I do think that there's something in that house that kind of just depresses anything that's in it, anyone or thing, because our lives, we actually talk about this all the time. We're like, it's so weird that we moved out of that house and everything just magically started to get better within a very short amount of time. And honestly, I don't even know how we moved out because we had to pay thousands to get out, and we were able to do it. So I look at it as like a really cool experience and something interesting and cool, like party stories that I can tell people. But man alive, I'm glad I don't live in that house anymore.
So like who owned the home? You guys, or you paid rent to
We rented it. Yeah.
Who was the homeowner? Did they have any experiences that you know of?
I don't know. Hopefully he doesn't listen to this podcast because he wasn't the nicest person in the world at all.
He owns a haunted house. I mean,
how many haunted house owners do you know that are nice?
Yeah.
Right. There was multiple times where he would try and get the boys to pay for things that a land/property owner should be paying for. And it was to the detriment of them. So that's why the house got so run down while we were living there. The property owner just didn't. I think that he didn't want to invest because he knew it would have been a lot of money. It would have had to been a complete gut and restore/renovate project, which probably would have cost him more than $1 million. And so I think he was just kind of, let's just maintain this as best we can, and people will rent because housing in Boise is kind of hard to find for rentals. And yeah, that made it even creepier.
Now you're on a land. I don't know what Boise looks like. Is it more rural? Do you have neighbors that are close by? Is it in a big town, city?
So this property is unique because it is on probably the largest piece of land in the area. Boise's kind of interesting. We have different areas of Boise. It's grown really fast because cost of living is lower here. But we were in what's called West Boise. It's called the West Bench. So you have the valley, which has the Boise River that flows through it. And then the bench is literally like a man-made cliff. It's almost like those houses were built up on that cliff bench above the river, and then they ended up developing it. And so we were living on the West Bench. And so it's a populated area. There's neighborhoods everywhere, there's schools, grocery stores. Boise is a metro area. It has over 250,000 people just in Boise, and that doesn't include all of the neighboring cities that are right next to it. So, but this particular property is, I would say if you were to tear it down, you could build a little mini subdivision of houses on it. It was very large. And so for that area, extremely sought after. by developers. And so, but because it's a historical landmark, they can't tear it down and develop on top of it. So it's kind of weird. It was a really big house on a lot of land with trees all around it, but we had neighbors and we had a mobile home park and we have a subdivision all right behind us. So we'd have like neighbor dogs coming into our yard and have to go like take them back to their property or their owners and stuff like that all the time. So it's kind of weird. We were like cut off from the world, but not.
I'm still lost on, not lost, but confused why the guy left the giant metal door and the glass, window between the rooms. That's so creepy.
I know. I know. So the owner of the property is also a real estate agent. He doesn't have the best reputation in town. And I honestly believe that he just didn't have the money or want to invest the money to make it nice. And so he had probably about 3 or 4 years of tenants who were willing to pay him enough that it would cover the mortgage and the property taxes and like the insurance on the property. And so I think that he just gave up. He's like, I don't care. And Tim got to live in a room with a creepy window into the slaughter room.
Would totally never. That's something out of The Shining.
Yeah, like why choose that room? I feel like you'd wake up, look through the window, and be like watching ghosts kill something.
I know. I don't know.
Or something staring back at you.
Yeah.
I know. I should ask Tim. I honestly think that Tim just doesn't think or believe in that. I don't know if he experienced anything. I know that he was down there with Zach when that door would open, but Zach made it sound like Zach would be like, all right, I'm going to go to bed. Good night. And then Tim's like, okay, whatever. Good night. Like it didn't faze him, which I don't know. It's kind of a Tim thing to do, in my opinion. Tim's very like blasé about things like that. But yeah, I think it was like 2 weeks after I moved in, Zach moved his computer out of the basement. He was like, I'm just tired of being creeped out while I'm trying to enjoy myself playing video games.
I feel like this would have made a really good, like, either like a mini episode, like Melrose Place kind of show, or nice little book.
Yeah. What did Boise? I sent the link to there's like an old Facebook page, because I think this was before the owner that owned it now bought it, but they were trying to save it because it was a historical landmark and it needs to be renovated and saved. But it would be called like Life at the Vicky or something like that, because that's what they called it. They nicknamed it the Vicky.
The Vicky.
Maybe that's the name of the spirit that lives there.
Or is it a Victorian? I don't know. What is the house? Is it a Victorian house or no?
Yeah, it's a Victorian house.
There you go.
Is there a thing about supernatural connections to like beehives? Because we had the fireplace in that house had a massive, just huge beehive. Like bees would come. We had a covering over the fireplace, and bees would still find their way through the duct tape and come into that room that the fireplace was in. And just an insane amount. Like the fireplace was hot to touch because of how many bees were in there.
What?
Yeah. And the landlord he wanted the boys to pay for the removal, and they were like, we're not doing that. You can.
Oh my God.
I would have set that bitch on fire.
I feel like
Right?
in the what was it, Amityville Horror, there's a lot of in a scene there's a lot of what is that? What are they called? Flies. I don't know about bees. What about bees, Nick? Do you know?
I know nothing about bees and the supernatural.
Well, I mean, they can get in anywhere. And if they found a home, they're like, that's what they do, right? They find
make
a
Oh yeah.
home.
I just wasn't sure if like, I've never, the beekeeper that came out to do, just to check to see how much it would cost, said that it was massive, and that they would have to actually take a crane and take apart the bricks to open up the fireplace to get it out.
Oh my
and to
God.
relocate the hive because it was so big. And so, yeah, I was just wondering, I'm like, is there any connection? Because at this point, everything about this house is just insane to me. So
Yeah, I just would have put it on fire.
So did they
Maybe the
get
whole
in all the
house.
time? Did they get in the home all the time?
We never really used that room. We just used it for storage. But I would go in there once a week to clean or pick stuff up, and I'd have to pick up like 20 to 30 dead honeybees like every time. Yeah.
Disgusting.
You should have put them on
Yeah.
like toothpicks, so that any other bee that came in is like, shit. I shouldn't be here.
Like
I need to go
Vlad the
back.
Impaler.
I'm gonna return home.
I could see her just putting these little tiny bees on these little tiny toothpicks, propping them up in some foam. Like, what are you talking about?
Hey man, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Oh man.
Little signs: do not enter.
'Cause they read.
Death will come.
There was a handwritten do not enter, or do not, it was like no solicitors, do not enter. Someone hand wrote that in black Sharpie next to the doorbell at the front door when it was a halfway house, and the owner just kept it, so it stayed there the whole time that we lived there. It's really creepy.
Clearly, it didn't work for the many stragglers that came into your
Right?
living room and just plopped on the couch.
I know, right? It's so funny. And it's because the front door, before I lived there, they never locked the front door because we're in Idaho, I guess, and they don't care. But as soon as I moved in, I grew up in Los Angeles, and I'm like, I do not live in a house where the doors are not locked. Like, that's just not how I live. And so we started locking the doors. Never had an issue with anyone trying to come in.
Right.
Good people
Easy
knock.
fix. Yeah.
Yeah, but no one came in. And I'm like, huh, it's funny. I feel like that's what happens when you have it was basically a fraternity house before I moved in.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm going house to house, I'm skipping that house.
Right.
Like nothing good's there.
Yeah.
Moving on.
You should have just put a
Yeah.
red tricycle in the front. That would have totally kept people away. I mean, it would have kept me away.
On like some dental floss and just like pull from like the window as people walk by. Like,
That's just too much work. Hopefully the wind picks it up.
Oh man. But yeah, that's those. I think that's all the stories. I'm trying to think of there any more. Every friend that I ever, like, I never felt grossed out or weird living there, like overall, but every friend that I invited to come over that wasn't from the area, so if they were stopping by or passing through and they needed a place to stay, every single one of them was like, this house creeps me out. I don't want to be here. I cannot believe, and they wouldn't stay more than a day. So I don't know if that means anything, but I just thought it was always, I always thought it was interesting that my friends at least rarely ever stayed at the house.
I've been in some old houses where I didn't have the cognizant awareness to think I'm afraid of this house, but that the house itself has made me uneasy and I wouldn't want to stay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so you still with this boyfriend?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, that's good. I mean, you have
Yeah,
like no
we
choice
live in-
now. You guys had those like ghost experiences.
I know. Bonded for life. And we got a dog together, so that kind of,
Oh,
It's like their kid.
I mean, you can ditch him, keep the dog.
Actually, I came in after he had already put the deposit down on Link. So
Ooh, custody battle
Yeah.
right there.
I know. Actually, my dad asked me about that when we first started dating. He's like, well, what are you going to do if you break up? What are you going to do with the dog? I'm like, Dad, don't put that out in the universe. We'll be fine.
Well,
Yeah,
well,
obviously I'm taking him. Don't worry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, stay together for the dog.
it's not like the dog could decide. How could that happen?
Oh, Link would totally decide, and Link would totally pick Zach.
Man's
And I'm
best
okay with that.
Yeah.
He's my snuggle buddy, but he's Zach's best friend. It's the corgi way. They like to have like their one owner that they mind and listen to.
I think that's our dog too. He loves you.
Yeah, I'm pretty awesome.
Even though I'm the one who feeds him and all of these things, lets him in, lets him out. Huh.
Yeah,
Man's
makes
best
sense.
friend.
Yeah, that sounds like us. I'm like taking him to the dog park, and I'm taking him on walks and feeding him, and Zach comes home from work, or Zach's done working, and he's like, all right, Link, let's play. And Link's like, bye, Mom. See ya. I don't care about you.
It would be the same way with our child too. You know,
Again, I'm
it's
pretty
always
awesome.
Dad.
So, being that you've, may have been visited by ghosts, would you rather be visited by an alien or a ghost?
Oh, an alien, because at this point, I need to experience something different.
Fair enough. You wouldn't be
Yeah.
afraid?
I mean, I think at this point in my life, I've decided that being afraid of things that I don't understand is a waste of energy. And if something bad's going to happen, then it's going to happen. So if I were to, I think it'd be exciting. I think I would be scared sighted. How about that? I'd be scared sighted.
Scared sighted. I like that.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm always flip-flopping which way I would be. I'm still going excited.
I'm going neither. I wouldn't want to be visited by either.
Oh, yeah. I'm saying I would want the alien because my go-to is like, at least I can potentially punch it in the face if I need to. The ghost is just like wasting my time, not going to work out. And I could probably share a beer with it.
Yeah, okay. They have those little slits where they let the beer.
It's allegedly. I don't know what these things have.
Have to tip his head back. And maybe, I don't even know if those slits move.
There you go. He could funnel. Be the ultimate funnel master, this thing. That big ass head just take those beers.
But how awesome would it be to live in that house, though? Or at least just paranormal. You should have had that paranormally investigated when y'all were living there.
I know. I inquired with everyone and they're like, we don't want cameras in here. And it's because like I said, it's the Mayhem Manor. So for a long time, that house, actually, I think it is still zoned as an event space. Like it could be a B&B. I think that's what it's, what the owner's trying to do right now is they're trying to make it into like a Airbnb or like a bed and breakfast for weddings. But yeah, they're like, no, we don't want cameras in here. I'm like, it would be so cool. But I think at one point I don't know why I didn't set a recorder out, knowing how obsessed I am with this stuff. Looking back on it now, I think that I just didn't, maybe I didn't want to actually know.
Well, yeah, because imagine living there and then you find out there's like this fucking demon that keeps saying like, get out, and you don't hear it. But now you hear it. Like, fuck.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, I distinctly remember the first week that we lived in our new place, and it was so much smaller of a house. Like it wasn't my favorite house I've ever lived in, but I felt this weight had been lifted. Like we'd gotten out of the house and all of the things that had happened. But then within 3 months, every situation that was tearing us down before we moved out was resolved. And I was like, maybe the house was bringing us down. Like maybe it's a good thing that we did get out when we did and as fast as we did.
Could have been so many things. It could have been the energy of all the people together.
Yeah.
All the different energies. Do you guys still talk to all of the people? Or, I mean, you said that some of them didn't pay. So was there resentment?
No, we just kind of washed our hands and was like, this is the best all of us could do. So we're kind of over it. I don't think any of us were like super best friends anyway. But we still talk to, actually, I don't, but Zach still talks to every person that we lived with on Facebook here and there.
Should get like a little Facebook page going.
For the house. So everyone that's ever lived there is like.
Yeah, give the stories. Then
Like,
write the book.
You're like, that's weird. I got stabbed. Huh. Luckily, I didn't.
And see where their lives went. See where their lives led them 3 months after.
Right. Yeah, I know. Well, the people who weren't paying rent ended up breaking up, but both of their lives got better for themselves. And then Salvi ended up, he's engaged now and going to be married, and he bought a house. Justin, he's doing really good too. Eli's doing really good. Zach and I are doing really good. Sterling's doing really good. Yeah, all of us are doing great. We're all doing fantastic. And I don't know if it was like the time of all of our lives, like like I said, we all knew we were getting into moving into that house. And before I moved in, it was a party house. And we had some big parties when I lived there too. And then right before I moved out, it was just like, okay, it's time. We got to go. We got to get out of here.
So when did the little girl drown? What year? Do you know?
I don't. I don't know a lot of the timeline or history of the house. I really want to go. I want to go. Our local libraries aren't really open right now because of the pandemic, but
Right.
there is the main library downtown has archives of housing records for this house, and it tells you every single person or business that owned it. And so that's how Zach was able to find out. And then he found out about a U-stick. Let's see, it's U-stick house. I think that was a canal. I can't remember where he said he found it, but he said he believes that I'm pretty sure he read an article that was like, oh, at one point a girl drowned in the pool, like a previous owner's daughter.
Yeah, it's got to be like, I mean, if it's a built-in pool, like how long ago did they really start making them, you know? Couldn't have been that far back.
Pretty far back.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, we're talking like fucking Romans and shit had like built-in pools.
Yeah, but in homes?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Those are Romans. Those aren't Victorian people.
I know, they're way smarter.
Yeah. Well, they say that.
Aliens.
Aliens.
So how did you go from LA to Idaho?
When I was in high school, my parents sold the house we were living in and moved us up to Boise. My grandparents
Guess that makes
lived up
sense.
here. Yeah. Yep.
A pretty big change.
It was a very big change. I didn't stay here for very long. I only went to high school here and then I left again because I didn't like it. I moved to Seattle and I lived there and I went to college and lived there for about 10 years. And then I couldn't afford to live there anymore. So I moved back, and that's where I've been here for almost 4 years now.
It's for the better. Isn't Seattle going kind of south?
I can't speak to that, but I can say that I watched the housing market change dramatically. I lived close to downtown for about 5 years. And when I first moved there, it was in 2011. My apartment, I mean, it wasn't a great apartment. It was nice. It was really small, but it was 2-bedroom across street from the bus stop and across street from a really nice park. And so I paid a little bit under $1,200 a month for a 2-bedroom, which at the time was pretty fair for the area. And then within 5 years, my apartment was listed for over $2,000 a month. So it jumped up quite a bit in the 5 years that I lived there, and I just couldn't afford it anymore for how small it was. Like the room that I was renting out, the other room that was in there, it was like a baby room. It was really small. It barely fit a queen size bed. So it was getting really hard for me to justify charging someone almost $1,000 a month for that.
Charge them anyway.
Yeah. And I didn't want to be an accountant anymore. So I quit that job and I was like, okay, let's go somewhere else and find a new adventure.
That's when you turn to ghost hunting?
Yeah, apparently.
What do you do?
So I'm a personal trainer and I own my own business. And I'm very much into the woo, as we call it. So my offerings and my services are very grounded in rituals and spiritual practices. But I mainly just teach online classes to people that want to feel better about exercise.
I love that.
Yeah. So she's just in the loss and unable to operate. And unfortunately, if we have to get shut down as a gym, we can't charge people memberships. That's what pays our bills. That's what pays rent and utilities and all of that. So I really feel for her, and I'm hoping that they won't, but at the same time, preparing if they do.
Well, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
Okay. Right now, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. Empower Your Present is the name of my business. You can just do @ and I have a fun little link tree on my Instagram where you can sign up for the email list to the pay what you can live classes every week if that's of interest to you.
I love that.
Awesome.
Well, thank you guys so much. This was really fun. I haven't told anyone I don't know about these stories.
Well, now you know us, sort of.
Yeah, now you guys know me too.
Yeah, this drip all on my body, soaking wet the sunny. Looking like a walking lick, yeah, you